the next part here, franchise tags. This was the tag deadline today. I'm sorry, pulling up my list right now. Whoops. But yeah, the list he sent me. So I don't know if I'll just go over the players that did get tagged, and we can, you can go over. I'll let you go some names. Obviously, Marcus May, safety of the Jets, tagged. Tackle Taylor Moton, more right tackle for the Panthers. Chris Godwin for the Buccaneers, wide receiver. Cam Robinson, tackle for the Jaguars, was tagged. Guard Brandon Scherf of the Washington football team. Also tagged Leonard Williams, defensive lineman for the Giants. Justin Simmons, the safety for the Broncos. I think he was like the first one tagged too. And then today, Allen Robinson, wide receiver for the Bears, tagged, and Marcus Williams of the Saints. So any names? I already know what I want to talk about, but any name that stick out to you from those that got tagged?
A lot of these felt pretty obvious. Leonard Williams. I mean, the reports are that he wants to stay there. They want to keep him. That felt pretty obvious there. Allen Robinson. I am interested to see about Allen Robinson's future because it does feel like he could potentially maybe try to force his way out or sit out or something like that. I think the quarterback situation there is even more heightened because of the Allen Robinson stuff. And I think he's one of the most underrated receivers in the league, a really good player. So he's definitely not a player to keep an eye on. The one that I really want to talk about is Brandon Scherf, um, because I mean he's an offensive lineman, and so it's going to kind of go under the radar. But this is the second time he's been franchise tagged. He was tagged last year as well, and the only other player in NFL history to ever be tagged twice, outside of technically Dak Prescott. Now he was actually tagged, but we'll talk about that later. It was part of technicalities. Anyway, the only other player to actually be tagged twice is Kirk Cousins by, you guessed it, the Washington football team. And we saw how that worked out. He eventually just left because Washington was not able to commit, and he did not change his number, and he got his money with the Vikings, and he's been there ever since. So I think Brandon Scherf's a guy to keep an eye on because I don't know. I feel like if you tag a player twice, it at least right now, it pretty much means this is their last year there, unless you're gonna give in to their demands. Because I mean, as a player, or if I was a player, I mean, if you weren't willing to commit to me over the last multiple years that we were negotiating, and you weren't willing to meet my demands or trade me or whatever, and you're just still dragging your feet, I'm out of there. I want no part with this organization because they just weren't willing to commit and weren't willing to give me what I thought I was valued. So I think Scherf, one of the best offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen in the whole league. You don't get to really see that much because Washington hasn't had necessarily the best offenses that he's been on. But yeah, I think he's a guy to keep an eye on moving forward because I could see him potentially leaving after this year. Maybe they get a deal done, but as the Kirk Cousins thing showed, they weren't able to do it. So I don't have a lot of faith in anything's changed this time outside of Ron Rivera's here this time. So maybe there's different management, different coaching, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in regards to that, I just feel like I feel like maybe unlike last time, Washington feels like they can extend. They just need more time. But yeah, that's an interesting situation to follow. The one that did intrigue me, especially at first, was Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers. Mainly because I felt like of the other two, Levante David and Shaq Barrett, of those three, I felt like no offense to Godwin, really good receiver, but in terms of importance to the team, I feel like Barrett or David would be more important, and that's who you would want to tag. Now, as we saw, I think shortly or a few hours ago, Levante David re-signed 2 years, 25 million, so he's back. But Shaq Barrett still isn't there, and yeah, it's we'll see what happens. But I think Shaq Barrett is very, as we saw against Kansas City, against Green Bay, Barrett and JPP were, I mean all the defense line, but those two guys were the main ones winning their matchups and chasing Mahomes and Rodgers around and giving them heck. So I think it's very key that they get Barrett back because I don't I mean I haven't looked over the edge rushers, but I mean at 32 I don't think there's an edge rusher that they'll be able to get Tampa Bay, they'll be able to match Barrett's production. And then, and I don't think, obviously, if they don't have enough money to sign Barrett, probably don't have enough money to sign another marquee pass rusher because there's not many others out there, I think, that are as good as Barrett and once again, also it's been in the system, so that helps. But in terms of the other franchise tag candidate, I mean, you already mentioned it. I texted you as soon as I heard it about Allen Robinson because yeah, I feel like, and I think he already liked someone. I think I saw he already liked a tweet about someone saying that the franchise tag is BS. I think it was I forgot it was like an old receiver, ex receiver. But yeah, I expect Allen Robinson. Maybe this is the Bears' way of making sure that that maybe they'll trade him. They'll probably will end up trading him at this point, unless they get a Russell Wilson or a better quarterback. But yeah, it seems like he's real unhappy there, and yeah, I think that maybe this is just the Bears. I would hope that they think that this is their plan to tag and then trade. Because yeah, if they think they can extend Allen Robinson with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles still on the roster, I don't foresee Robinson playing, or if he does play, he'll play kind of pull like a Le'Veon, come back week 6, 8. Excuse me.
I don't think for the Steelers,
Oh, because
Le'Veon.
I think didn't Le'Veon do that? Not the year he held out the whole year, but I think the year before that,
No, the
right?
year before, yeah.
Yeah, I
Sort
mean,
of like a Melvin Gordon, like
or
he did with the
yeah,
Chargers.
and Melvin Gordon's a better example. Yeah, where you sit out for 6 weeks and then come back, you play. But I just don't seem out of all the players that got tagged, I feel like he's the one that's it's just more of a temporary solution. To maybe move on from or don't get some compensation for Allen Robinson. But out of the other tag candidates, I mean, a little bit surprising for Cam Robinson. I mean, because I thought he's a solid tackle, but it seems like from everyone else, media and over, he wasn't regarded as one of the higher tackles. But it is Jacksonville. They if they do plan, they probably are getting quarterback number one. It is smart to make sure you keep a good solid tackle around. Cam Robinson's been there, done that, so maybe that's their idea. Kind of a prove it year two. Maybe they'll extend him after this year, see how well he works in Urban Meyer's system with I'm assuming Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see about that. But all the other tags I really don't have any issues with. I mean, Panthers really needed to keep Taylor Moton. Jets, we know the Jets don't kind of stink, so having a good safety like Marcus May around, solid, and we'll see if the other guys can get extended. But we'll get on to the next part, the kind of the second half. Notable names not tagged. I'll go over some of them real quick. Bud Dupree, the Steelers, was not tagged. Like I mentioned, Jack Barrett, guard Joe Thuney for the Patriots, safety Keanu Neal for the Atlanta Falcons, wide receiver Kenny Galladay for the Lions, tight end Hunter Henry for the Chargers, running back Chris Carson for the Seahawks, and running back Aaron Jones for my Packers, and then Hassan, I guess edge rusher slash outside linebacker, Hassan Reddick for the Cardinals. So any names jump out to you that you're maybe surprised by that they weren't tagged?
I mean, we already talked about Shaq Barrett. Just another note on that. I assume because I don't know if there's any benefit to tagging Godwin over Barrett, except maybe it's cheaper. I don't know that
Maybe
for a fact though. But I have to assume maybe it was like commitment level or how sure they were going to re-sign the other guys or something. Because obviously they got the Levante David deal done pretty quick, so I don't think they probably considered tagging him because they knew that he'd for sure come back. Maybe that's the same with Shaq Barrett. Maybe they feel really confident they're going to get a deal done.
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I have the numbers here, the estimates according to over the cap. So once again, this is always tricky because it depends on what they list him. So if he's listed as a linebacker, the tag estimate would be 15.65 million. But if he's listed as a defensive end, which he kind of played more like, it would be 17.75 million. And then uh, the tag for receiver is estimated to be 16.43 million. So if he's a D end, they're saving money. But if he's listed at if he's deemed as a linebacker, then I guess they're not really saving money in terms of just this one year. So I don't know. But
Yeah, I'm not sure. Regardless, I mean, that Shaq Barrett's an interesting one, but the two names that really stand out to me are first off Bud Dupree with the Steelers. Obviously, they were in the J.J. Watt sweepstakes. They wanted to get him, and they didn't. And we saw how important Bud Dupree was to that defense. I don't think they were the same once he got injured. And I think that retaining him is a big key factor because you can have a guy like TJ Watt, but if you don't have other threats, especially on the opposite side, they can really focus. The offense can really focus their energy on stopping TJ. And when that happens, obviously that frees up the other side of the line, and so that's where a guy like Bud Dupree, made his money. And so I really think that he's going to be a key guy to watch. In free agency. I don't know if the Steelers, I don't know their cap situation, if they plan to try and resign him, or what the deal is there. But I think he's a guy to keep an eye out for. And the other one, there's a lot of big names on here, but I think it's Kenny Galladay. Because I think that he's in a position to really cash in because as we saw, there's some teams that they need a wide receiver. And also, is Will Fuller a free agent? He's eligible for the tag as well, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't really. I think once the PD thing came out, he wasn't really. There was no news that they were thinking about it. So I guess, but I
Yeah.
think he was eligible. There wasn't a
Anyway,
thought.
Um, anyway, on Kenny Galladay, I think that he's in a position to cash in because, like we've talked about, the Ravens or even some other teams like your Packers, if they wanted a second receiver, I don't know Kenny Galladay's price tag, um, but I think there's a lot of teams out there that could use wide receiver that may not be in position to get one of those top ones in the draft, and so I think that he can make a lot of money. I don't think the Lions are gonna make a swing at trying to keep him because they could have just tagged him. They didn't spend it on anybody else. So those are the two real standout names for me. Which I mean, this list of guys not tagged. I think there's a lot of studs here. I mean, Joe Tooney's a beast. Hunter Henry's a really good tight end. Chris Carson, Aaron Jones are really serviceable running backs. But I mean, as we've seen with the running back market, honestly, I think both those teams did a good job, and you can easily replace running backs. So yeah, those guys are going to be interested. I will also be interested to see how much money Hassan Reddick makes because he did just have a monster year with I think like 12 and a half sacks, and that's his first season really playing as an edge rusher. So I wonder, if the team's really going to pay him off of that, and try and pull like a Shaq Barrett kind of move because when he was in Denver, he didn't get that much attention. All of a sudden he goes to Tampa Bay, boom, the guy's the guy, and he puts up big sack numbers. So those three, Dupree, Galladay, Reddick are probably the three that I'm really interested to see, what happens with them moving forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, as a Packer fan, Aaron Jones. Yeah, it sounds like I think they said they're still working on trying to get an extension for him, but like we've alluded to, especially you, it's tough to commit long term to running back, and Aaron Jones especially because he's based as a finesse back based on his speed and agility, and we've seen over the past few years, especially against it. We saw in the playoff game against Tampa Bay, a very good run defense, a very physical team. Aaron Jones just couldn't hang, and then we've seen it like the past 2 years where it kind of starts falling off towards the end of the year, and I think that's the reason why we got Green Bay drafted a guy like AJ Dillon, more of a power back, more of a bruiser, a guy that's going to last throughout the whole season. Um, in terms of actually, I was actually more surprised we didn't tag or try with Corey Linsley, our center, because I think that's a bigger loss for us. Um, and I'm interested to see where he goes. I mean, because it seems like apparently we haven't even talked to him for a contract. I think it's a shame because I think the fact that our guard Owen Jenkins, he had a really good year, but he can play. This year he played left tackle, but he also in college played center. So I'm guessing that's Green Bay's ideology. There is we're just gonna move, you know, him to center and then maybe draft a guard. I don't know, but that's one I'm surprised on. I'm curious to see where Linsley goes because he's definitely one of the better interior linemen. And then yeah, like you mentioned, Kenny Galladay. Obviously, Lions really aren't in win now mode, so I can see why they didn't want to tie up money with him. And I think most of their money's going to Goff and I believe Trey Flowers if they still have him. So yeah, Kenny Galladay would be a very interesting option for different teams. I mean, depending on what New England does, I could see I could see New England liking him. I would love for him to come to Green Bay, but um, if but I'm not sure what our money's looking like. This is all hard to do also just because we still I believe we still don't know what the cap is going to be for this year. Um,
Yep.
which we'll talk about a little bit more of that next with the Dak situation. And then yeah, Hassan Reddick, I think teams are very hesitant because kind of like you mentioned, like this year he finally did it. And I think one of those games he had 12 sacks, but I think half of them came in like one game
He had 5 against the Giants.
against the Giants. And I mean we talked about before the Giants. Uh, Not a great pass blocking line, and Daniel Jones not great pocket awareness either. So, if he
And
played,
2 rookie tackles, so he
yeah,
was great.
basically. So yeah. I feel like teams are taking out the grain of salt, and yeah, they're not really trusting Hassan Reddick. And I think like I'm not sure we mentioned this last episode. I know I mentioned this to you regardless. I just feel like because the cap's unknown, and because teams because of all that, I think teams have been, as we've seen, I think less hesitant to tag players and extend them, especially like we mentioned the running backs and Hassan Reddick. Like I'm saying, a guy kind of like a one-year wonder contract year kind of player. But yeah. And last player I just want to mention Hunter Henry. I thought that was very interesting, but apparently he kind of wanted out. So hopefully I would love for him to have him in Green Bay. We're losing Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan. And I would say Hunter Henry, when healthy, is a better option. Obviously, health's been an issue for him. And another guy that health's been an issue for, we're interested to see is Keanu Neal. Um, you know, I know you and I were talking about you want to go to Dallas, but once again, injuries has kind of affected him. But that's just the way he plays. He plays, with no regard for his own body, which is a good and bad thing because he's not the biggest guy. So, yeah, I'm interested to see where those guys go and exactly what money they'll get. Whether it be elsewhere or if those teams extend them. But anything else on this list you wanted to mention or anyone?
At least on Keanu Neal, I want him because he's a Dan Quinn guy. He has talent, and because of the injuries, I think they could get him for cheap, and it would be like a 1 year deal. We saw how bad our secondary was, so I think he's an upgrade because I don't think we're going to keep Xavier Woods just because of the market and all that kind of stuff. So I think it'd be worth the risk because if he does get hurt, like I said, it's probably a 1 year deal. You cut him, and he's familiar with Dan Quinn's system, so I think that would help too. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't actually know because Dallas just tends not to invest in safety at all. So we'll see. And he is a little repetitive because we do have Donovan Wilson who plays the exact same style, like really hard hitting, no regard for his own body. So I could also see them not go after Keanu Neal because maybe Dan Quinn just envisions Donovan Wilson playing that role.
Yeah, or maybe y'all we'll get the guy you wanted last year, Earl Thomas.
Yeah, well, at this point, I don't know if he'll play again.
Yeah,
We'll see.
unfortunate. We'll see.